Hello! So in today's book review video, I'm going to be talking about Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. I received this in a book box, and I remember pulling this out of the book box and being really intrigued by this. I thought it sounded really interesting, kind of right up my alley, and it definitely was one that I found quite interesting. So to tell you a little bit of background about this story, we follow a girl called Vesper, and she has run away from home. She ran away from home when she was 18 years old, and she's now living on her own in New York City, and she's a waitress. So you start off learning about her life as a waitress in New York City, and it drops here and there a few hints about her background, you know, where she's come from. She doesn't really like talking about her family, where she's, you know, been brought up and that kind of a thing. And it's quite obvious that there is some sort of trauma, like childhood trauma, that she just doesn't want to get into. But it's interesting because you don't really feel a whole lot of sympathy towards this character because she's kind of an unlikable character. She doesn't actually come across as a very nice person. She's quite uncaring, she's quite unfeeling towards her friends. She's quite quick to annoyance and anger. She doesn't hold a lot of sympathy for her friends. She gets quite impatient at work, which from the sounds of it, you know, I can imagine there are some, you know, when you get frustrating customers, when you're working in cafes and restaurants, I can understand how that would be frustrating. But yeah, she just comes across as not a nice person, really. Nobody really likes her at work. She doesn't really have many friends. And yeah, she's distanced herself from her family. And you're like, okay, maybe she's this, you know, distant person because of her family. But yeah, it's still, you get a sense of not really liking her as a person, which for me personally doesn't really bother me as a reader. I will say the writing style of this book was very easy to read. I really enjoyed the way it was written. I enjoyed, you know, getting to know the characters, and yeah, just the way the whole book was kind of set up, I did enjoy. It is quite a slow burn. I'll get more into that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, I can read a book and not like the main character and still enjoy the book. You know, you just kind of read it and you think, oh, she's a bit of a dick all the way through it. But if the plot is interesting enough, you can still enjoy the story. And that's what I found with this book. Even though she was a bit of an arse, you know, you kind of forgave her here and there, but the plot was interesting enough that it kind of kept me hooked. So I'm going to have to talk about, I would say, a very mild spoiler in this book. There's no way I can talk about this book without giving a mild spoiler. But you find out very early on that basically she's come from a religious cult. I believe it does actually say on the back, yeah, it says nobody has a normal family, but Vesper's is truly something else. She left home at 18 and never looked back. Yeah, so basically it says she left a religious community, and growing up, if she left, she was told that she couldn't return. So yeah, she grew up in this religious community, and to begin with, you think, okay, this is going to be some kind of extreme Christian community, because that's normally how these books kind of go when you're reading about cults. You think, oh, if you think of an extreme religious cult, you think, oh, it's some sort of you know, offshoot from Christianity, but it's not. It actually takes a completely different twist, which, thinking about it, the themes of this book make sense, but when I actually read it, it did take me back a little bit, and I was like, oh, that's actually quite a cool concept. It kind of goes the complete other direction. So it's not a Christian religious cult, it's another kind of religious cult, which, yeah, took me by surprise. But yeah, it wasn't Christianity, it was something else. And when you find out about it, you're like, okay, that's different. I can see like the horror aspects coming into this story. And yeah, that definitely piqued my interest. And this is where the book gets a little bit slower. I will say, like I said in the beginning, you're kind of introduced to her as a character, and you're being introduced, you know, and it's slowly dropping hints there, here and there. And then she ends up being invited to a wedding, and the wedding is taking place obviously in the community she grew up in. It's actually one of her closest friends. She knows both the bride and the groom, so she's like, well, I know both of these people. She knew them very well, she grew up with them, I've been invited to the wedding. She's a little bit intrigued, she's like, should I go, shouldn't I go? But in the end she does go. But of course that involves her going back into this cult, and yeah, she's not sure how she's going to be received. Are they going to be happy to see her? Are they going to be really angry at her? She doesn't really have much of a relationship with her father, but her mother is very much embedded in this cult. And yeah, it's very much, I would say this is actually more of a coming of age story than an actual horror, because kind of like the horror aspect is involved with this cult, but it doesn't go too in depth with it really until the last very few chapters. I would say up until this point, whoops, the book has left us. Up until the last few chapters, it's very much about her family life, reconnecting with family members, how each family member treats her differently. Some people are happy to see her, some people obviously don't want her to come back. She has a very complicated relationship with her mother. You're not really sure if the mother actually even likes her throughout this whole story. She's very aloof, she's very on and off. It's left, the main character Vesper is left with a lot of questions. Was it a good idea to go back? Should she come back? Shouldn't she? So yeah, it's very much a coming of age story where Vesper is kind of learning to separate herself from her upbringing and this cult. And, going back to it, it really reaffirms her feelings about this. And then she's like, no, hang on a minute, I am my own person. I can think for myself, and you get to see hear her judgments through what she's thinking about other people in the cult, hear her judgments about other people, and it was just interesting. It was a very interesting story. I did see from the people on Goodreads, a lot of people who had issues with this book did say that the pacing was off and there wasn't a whole lot of horror. Which I do agree, there is horror in this book, but I feel like the first half to middle of this book, it's more to do with the atmosphere and the kind of creepy feelings about her and not being sure about the people, like her family members, the other people in this cult who she's gone back to see, not really understanding their true intentions and getting a little bit creeped out by that. I would say the true horror aspects, like I said, are towards the end of the book, where it tries to cram in a lot of horror. And I kind of wish it went a little bit further, especially with the cult. It could have explored so much more about this cult, like their actual practices, why they thought what they thought, how they practiced out, different things within this cult. And I kind of wish it had gone a little bit darker, a little bit deeper with that. So I can see why there would be a few complaints about this. But really, I think for me, I would give it a solid 3-star. I think the only reason why I wouldn't give it more is because I wanted it to go, like I said, a little bit deeper into the cult, a little bit more horror, and not being such a coming of age story. I can enjoy those types of plots, but they're not my absolute favourite. I feel like with this one, I just enjoyed it basically because I found the twist in it so interesting and so intriguing, and I liked the whole setup. I feel like this book was very well written. I did enjoy the writing style. I think I could have easily DNF'd this book halfway through had it not been yeah, had the writing style not been so easy to consume and me being like, okay, I'm just gonna figure out what's gonna happen, you know. It was a little bit predictable in parts. I feel like once you figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, that's where it's going. And it is predictable. But overall, yeah, like I say, a solid 3-star, and a 3-star is not a bad rating for me by any means. It means it wasn't like a groundbreaking book for me, but it was definitely one that I enjoyed reading and would recommend. There have been other books by this author, which I have since found out about. Cackle, which apparently was quite popular, and such sharp teeth, which I actually have, and I've read a couple of pages. I haven't got too deep into it yet, but yeah, it's a werewolf book, so I really actually do need to get on with that, because I really enjoy werewolf stories, and now I know that I like the writing style of this author. I definitely need to get back on with that one. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this book. Have you heard of this book? Would you be interested in reading it? If you're into like religious horror, I would say read this book, because I feel like you're going to enjoy the twist, you're going to enjoy the plot. I felt like it did it very well without being too heavy, if that makes sense, which is also might sound a little bit weird for other people who've read this book and you're like, what? Like the ending, really? But yeah, for me, I didn't feel like it was too heavy. And if you're into books about cults, like I said, cults or religious cults and cults in general and horror, I would say give this one a go, because you might like it. But yeah, that was my review of Black Sheep. Yeah, quite positive. I will be interested to read more by this author. Cackle got a lot of praise from what I've seen. When I was looking up reviews of Black Sheep, a lot of people mentioned Cackle and how they enjoyed that book. So I need to look that one up, and I'll be reading Such Sharp Teeth next, and I will let you know how I get on with that one. But so far, enjoying this book by this author. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Are you interested in reading this book? Have you heard of it? Have you read it and you felt the same or different to me? Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say for today's quick little review video. So as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, bye guys.